Welcome, and thank you for joining today to our first training webinar of the year. Today, we'll be taking a look at Taxon Profiles, which is one of our newer features in ZIMS, which is still expanding, but already offers some pretty cool opportunities to take a look at global data for species in human care. I'm Sarah Lavin. I am a training specialist here at Species360, and I'll be leading you through a demonstration of all the features in Taxon Profiles. And I'll be joined by Caitlin, our senior product owner for ZIMS for Stud Books and SCTI, and Hannah, our data analyst. They'll be on hand to help me answer any questions you have about Taxon Profiles and the data included there at the end of our demonstration. So on the agenda today, I want to help you understand what Taxon Profiles are, what users at your institution can access it, and how can you grant access to those users. After I've touched on this, I'll move on to the demonstration, and we'll be working in live ZIMS to look at what Taxon Profiles actually does, and get a hands-on feel for it. And then we'll finish off with that Q&A. So as I mentioned, please add your questions into the Q&A area throughout the talk. I'll have colleagues checking in on that, and they might answer some of your questions there and then, but we might save other questions for the Q&A session at the end. So whatever feels most appropriate, but please do submit your questions, anything that comes to mind. I've booked in an hour into your calendar for today, but this might not take the full hour, so we'll just see how we get on. So Taxon Profiles initially launched in late 2024, and it was our aim to create an area in ZIMS where users can gain insights on species in their care and find answers to important questions using aggregated and anonymized global data. The hope was to create a space in ZIMS where you can find out a wealth of information for any species in one specific area. So when it was first launched, it provided insights for global weight analysis for thousands of species and provided an area to view the latest IUCN Red List status, the CITES listing for that species, as well as habitat and range information. And you can also see data that is gathered within ZIMS about species holdings and stud books. So Taxon Profiles is essentially taking the data that is recorded daily into ZIMS by all of our members and presenting it in a way to help you answer questions about species in your care. So one of those questions might be, what is the average weight of a 4-year-old female giraffe? Or what are the IUCN Red List statuses, habitats, and range for different penguin species? So all of this can be found in this part of the taxon profile for each species. And in January this year, we added the Reproduction Dashboard to Taxon Profiles so that you can answer questions like, what is the youngest age this animal might reproduce? Or what is the age this animal might stop producing offspring? As well as getting to understand things like seasonality of breeding for species in your care. So before we get started in the live demonstration of Taxon Profiles, I just wanted to mention role access. So by default, any role that has been created by Species360 that is assigned to your users will have access to Taxon Profiles. So that's the roles like local admin or the user role or the read-only role. So the things that have been created by us at Species360 will give people the ability to view Taxon Profiles. But If your institution uses custom roles to grant access to features in ZIMS, then you'll need your local admin to check that role and make sure that it has the ability to search and view taxon profiles through the global reports and tools area. So I've just included this screenshot here. So this is where your local admins will need to go to grant access to this tool. And if you don't have this turned on, then you might not be seeing taxon profiles. But now I've covered a little bit of an introduction into what taxon profiles is and how you can get access. I'll switch over into live ZIMS and start doing a bit of a demonstration. When I log into ZIMS, obviously I navigate to the home page. And if you're accessing taxon profiles for the first time, you're going to head to the start menu. You're going to head to new features and you'll open up taxon profiles. And you'll notice that anytime you're opening these new features within ZIMS, you're navigating here to a new URL. So each of these URLs is unique, and I'll touch on why that's important or why that's useful in just a moment. So this is the landing page for taxon profiles. It takes us to the search tool for taxon profiles. And essentially what you want to do is start by searching for taxa that you're interested in. And this can be done for family rank or below. So if I wanted to look for canids and I want to see any taxon profiles that are available for canids, then I can search that at the family level here, and I'll get a list generated below of all the species or subspecies that fall into that. If you have a specific species in mind, I can search by common name as well as scientific name. And now, because I've searched red panda, it's given me the option to search for red pandas as a family at the species level or even subspecies level. I'm going to select species, and it's also included subspecies here in this kind of overview area. So here in the overview, we can see information on IUCN status, CITES listing, and where this species is managed, like what associations are managing stud books for this species. I can open up a taxon profile specifically for a subspecies, but if I see this logo anywhere and I hover over it, I can see that if I select this taxon, then I'm going to see the report for not only the species, but also the subspecies will be included in this data set. So that's what this icon indicates, that it's including data from species and below. So I'm going to open Red Panda. And now I'm here in the taxon profile specifically for red pandas. I can see the URL has updated again. So I can use this URL to share with colleagues. I could send this to other people if they want to navigate directly to this page. But why this is quite cool is because it allows us to generate QR codes as well. So here I could make a QR code for red panda taxon profiles. I can download that QR code, open it up, and here I can see this QR code now. So you can print these out, you can stick them in keeper diaries, you might put it near an enclosure for a specific species. So your staff can scan this from their mobile phones and they can access the taxon profile directly from their mobile device. They need to have a ZIMS login to view all of this data, of course, but it makes that a lot more accessible and really easy to view from anywhere if they use a mobile device. So coming back to what the taxon profile includes, As we saw before, it includes information that is pulled directly from the IUCN Red List website, so we can see the Red List status, the CITES listing, and information about habitat and range. This is, like I said, pulled from the IUCN Red List website. The data in the bottom half of the screen is pulled from ZIMS data. So we can see species holdings for ZIMS institutions, and we can also see which associations are managing stud books for this species. Over on the right-hand side of the screen, we're looking currently at the weights report, but we can also access the reproduction dashboard as well. But here in the weights report, we'll see a bit of data about how many individuals contributed to this data set, how many weight events are included in this data set. So we've got over 2,000 individuals and over 47,000 weight events. So quite a robust data set to look at all of these global weights for red pandas. If I hover over the graph, I can see some more information. So I can see specifically how much the mean weight is for a 5-year-old, 5 years and 3-month-old red panda. I can see how many animals contributed to that data point. And if I want to see some areas on the graph in more detail, I can I can select certain areas to see in more detail. And again, hover over any of these data points to see for that specific age class. If I click reset zoom, it'll just take me back to that graph as a whole. And you can filter this data. So right now we're looking at all red pandas, whether they are undetermined sex, female or male. I can filter so I can just see males when that updates. So now the data has changed again because we're just looking at a subset of that population. I can change it to be female. And I can also just have no filters applied and see all of those sexes again. Something that we can't see in my demonstration, because I'm not working in an institution's data, is that if you hold this species at your collection and you have weight records for that animal, you would have the ability to overlay your data against this global data. So there will be an extra field when you log into Taxon Profiles if you hold that specific species or have weight records for that specific species, you'll be able to overlay that data. And the last thing to point out is that we have the disclaimer over here, which will give you so much more detail than I could recount right now about what data is included and what data is excluded for certain reasons. I'll move on to our reproduction dashboard now. And so the first screen that we come to when we open the reproductive dashboard is just an overview of all the data. So what is included in the reproductive dashboard and what is the data in the sample. So we get a visual overview, which you can zoom into certain areas on the map. And you can hover over these points on the map to see how many reproductive events took place at that certain location. So you can gain a bit more of an insight. You can zoom back out on that map, see what regions are holding a lot of this species, what countries do hold the species or which countries don't. And then here we can see what data, like I said, is contributing to the reproduction dashboard. Right now, with the filters that we have applied, we can see the number of offspring, the number of reproductive events that have been recorded for this species, number of breeding females and males, and the number of institutions that have contributed to this data. So this is what this data set looks like with the current filters applied. But we have this area over here where you can change the filters. You can change the data that is included in this report or in this dashboard. And you can see by default that we have set some data exclusions. We've set the data to exclude unknown parentage and to exclude multiple parents and also to exclude outliers. We can change this. So if I want to include unknown parents in this report or include multiple parents, you'll see that the sample size suddenly changes. We're including a lot more data that was previously excluded. If you want to reset, just click reset to default to apply those exclusions again. And that will go back to this kind of baseline that we set as default. If I scroll down in this filters area, you can also choose to start filtering where you want to see reproductive data for. Do you only want to see for a certain continent or a country? You only want to see it for the northern hemisphere? Do you want to only see data or reproductive events from a set date range? And if you're working with a taxonomy that has multiple subspecies, you can also filter to just see that subspecies as well. So again, you'll see that data set reduce when you start applying these filters. And if I have applied the filters in this screen, they'll still be applied when I move to other areas in the reproductive dashboard. So even though I applied it in the data overview, those filters remain applied every time I move through this dashboard, unless I go here and reset that to the default. So if I open up the age summary tab, we'll move on to a new area within the reproductive dashboard. And the age summary might be somewhere that you use to learn more about the realistic reproductive lifespan for a species. What does that look like for each of the sexes? So over here on the left-hand side, we've got data for female red pandas, and on the right, we have the data for male red pandas. And what we're initially looking at is all reproductive events that have been recorded for this species. And that breaks down in the graph to let us look at the mean age of reproductive events, as well as the median. And then what's quite nice is that we have these 5% and 95% benchmarks, which highlight or which have been highlighted to indicate when an animal is most likely to start and end its reproductive life stage. So 5% of females for red pandas have reproduced by the age of 2, and 95% of females have reproduced by the age of 10.1. So these figures give you just a more realistic expectation of when this animal might be reproductive. And then we have these other figures, so youngest age and oldest age at reproduction. These are just as real, just as meaningful, but they're just more extreme. Maybe there's only been one animal that ever reproduced at 13 or at this young age. But these values above let you know kind of the percentage of animals that are bred by that age. You can also hover over the graph to glean more information as well. So if I hover over the age of 2, we can see that there have been 222 reproductive events by that age for this species. if I click here to maximize the graph, I can see some of that core data and I can see the raw data here. If you want to see those figures just all side by side. And you can always click this icon here to export some of this data if you want to export this as an image. Also, in the age summary, you can look at first reproduction only. So the previous graph was just looking at all reproductive events for females or males. Now we're looking at when is the first time this animal could possibly reproduce. And so we're getting a very different picture here. So 5% of females have reproduced for the first time by the age of 1.9, and 95% of females have reproduced for the first time by the age of 8. So these can just help you answer questions about when should you expect an animal to first breed and is it likely to breed after a certain age. So it can help you with some of your management decisions when you're thinking about the reproductive lifespan or expectations for a species that you hold. As I move on to the litter and clutch size, this graph this graph will show us either the frequency or the percentage of the total reproductive events for that given species. So if I hover over these data points, I can see that red pandas, 40% of total reproductive events produce one offspring in a litter. 52% of reproductive events produce twins, and 7% of reproductive events produce triplets. So again, this can help you when you're trying to manage your expectations of how many offspring a species might produce, or when you're planning for enclosure usage needs for the future. If you need to separate these animals once they reach a certain age, or how many is going to be in the litter, combine that with that reproductive age, and you might be able to start answering questions that you couldn't answer before. And then finally, the last area in the reproductive dashboard is seasonality. So we can view this for both northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere and see how different that is. Again, we can see the sample size for each of those hemispheres. We are generally going to see a lot more of these species held in the northern hemisphere. So maybe you want to only see this data for the northern hemisphere, and we can see that this species, 60% of their reproductive events took place within June, and 30% almost in July. Whereas if we switch that to the southern hemisphere, we're going to see very different data, and we can see, again, this is looking at percentage of total reproductive events. So we're only seeing 4% of reproductive events as a total rather than just in the southern hemisphere. Again, if you ever want to apply filters, just know that these are here in the top left-hand corner. So if you only wanted to see data for the southern hemisphere, then those percentages suddenly change, because I'm only looking now at reproductive events for the southern hemisphere. I can see that 72% of those reproductive events happen within December, which is very different to what we saw before when we include all hemispheres. So to kind of round out some of what we're talking about with taxon profiles, I'll just switch back to my slides. And one thing that I want to mention is that not all of the graphs and reports will be as kind of picture perfect as the species that I've looked at today. And it really comes down to the data that's available within ZIMS and if users are recording informative and accurate information for that species. So when you start exploring taxon profiles, if you come across graphs for species that you hold that are maybe a bit more erratic because there are fewer data points, just know that every weight measurement or every bit of data that you add within ZIMS can help you create this more informative taxon profiles for the future. So don't be discouraged if you see graphs that don't seem that informative right now. Just use this as maybe a bit of inspiration to start doing more data entry if you know you hold that species or you know other institutions that hold that species, because we can really improve what's available by just entering more data. So my call to action is kind of what can you do to improve the data? So I would say you can do lots of things to improve your data, but when I'm thinking about taxon profiles and what would really benefit the current reports is if you can look through your animals in your collection that have undetermined parentage, then is that true? Or do you know the parents and could that be recorded? We obviously don't want you to just fill in parents if you're unsure, but uh, if your knowledge is improved or you do know who the parents are and that just hasn't been transferred to ZIMS, then please record that. Record weights for all species. So whether that's fish species or amphibians, that's just as important as recording data for our mammal and our bird species, which are probably a bit more represented. And we have mobile data entry now. So it makes it really simple for people to be doing more data entry on the go. Um, and yeah, really encourage keepers as they're taking those weights to get them directly into ZIMS and not just sat on pieces of paper that are lost. Um, Historical data entry. Maybe you have old handwritten records or weight record sheets that have been sat there. If you can just find 10 minutes to dedicate and sit down and enter some of that data, that could be really informative and again, contribute to this global data. And birth estimates or unknown birth dates. Again, just check in, is that correct? Or do you have more accurate information now? When you accessioned that animal, maybe you didn't have up-to-date information, but if something has changed or you found out data and you can add more accurate birth dates, that means a whole other set of data opens up to us because we can't include animals with birth estimates in a lot of our global reports because we just don't know the ages of those animals. So they're my calls to action, and I'm sure my colleagues will have lots more call to action of data points that would be great to be added into ZIMS. But these are just a couple that I was thinking of that are really relevant to taxon profiles. And I'll now open up the floor to any questions. So thank you so much again for joining.
Sarah, we did have a request if you could show the weight graph with an individual overlaid.
Caitlin, while they're logging in, do you want to answer one of the ones that you have flagged for answering live?
Yeah, I actually would probably be helpful if Sarah has that graph up because a lot of those are about filtering and looking at the weight data, like zooming in to specific age ranges and looking at infant data. So you can look at the first few weeks of life. I think the first month is broken down by weeks, but after that it's by year. But Sarah can show you what that looks like. And I think just showing everybody how you can zoom in into that
Mhm.
weight graph to find an age range. If you're, very interested in that specific range, the report can do that. And so when she gets that set up, we'll have her show that zooming feature again.
Now I'm back in Taxon Profiles for red pandas, and we've been given a specific animal to search for. So now that I'm logged into an institution's data, I can see here that I can overlay an animal. So I'll put in that animal's ID, and I can overlay it here. Is it a male? So maybe I want to track it against this data. And if I want to zoom, if I ever want to zoom on the graph, I'm going to left click and draw the area that I want to zoom on. And then I can start hovering over these data points. So I can hover over the data points for that individual or for the graph in general, for that age range. So you can see where your individual animals are sitting by comparison. And what was the other question, Caitlin? To zoom in on like the first few months of life?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I'll just make that box around here. And then when I hover over those data points now, I can see 0 days to 2 days, 2 days to 6 days, 7 days to 13. And you see these much smaller age ranges on the growth curve here.
So we did apply a hard rule for this first iteration of our reproduction dashboard to have a stricter rule around date estimates, so that we can have better quality data currently in that first iteration. We might look at expanding that to have bigger estimate ranges. So for our weights, we use a filter for estimates need to be within a year. So we might look at that in the future for the reproduction dashboard, but currently we don't have any immediate plans to update that bit of it.
Somebody's asked if we're able to overlay more than one individual in the weight graph. As far as I'm aware, it's just one individual at a time. Is that correct, Hannah or Caitlin?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right now you can only choose one animal from the drop down, but we have heard from other people that they would really like to be able to add multiples. So that's good to have that feedback. Thank you. If we have time, we did have somebody ask to show how you get the role access again, Sarah.
Yeah, I can show that. When it comes to role management, this is going to have to be done by your local admin. They can go to Start, Institution, and My Institution. Through the husbandry roles area, any of the roles that are created by Species360, if they have this green tick next to them, that means they're a Species360 role. And if this is applied to a user, so if they have the local admin or maybe they've got the read-only role applied to them, they'll have access to Taxon Profile by default. But if you're creating custom roles, so I've got this custom role here that I've created, what you'll need to do is come here, you can right click, manage that role access. And in global reports and tools, you just need to make sure that Taxon Profiles is ticked and turned on. And then when this keeper data entry role is applied to a user, that will ensure that they can see Taxon Profiles. So that's how the role management side of it works. Question, which is, any plans to update the age distribution tool and merge it into Taxon Profiles?
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. Yes, as we're continuing to modernize ZIMS, so Sarah showed that, it's opening, Taxon Profiles is opening that new tab and it's outside of ZIMS. We're kind of updating our look and feel of ZIMS. And as we're continuing to do that for the reports that are currently available in ZIMS, we will update them and put them into taxon profiles. So that's part of the plan long term.
Looks like the questions are winding down. I want to make sure
Yeah.
everyone saw the comments in the chat. There is a link to additional information. If you're not currently a Species360 member or subscriber, you can find more information there. And always, you can contact us at support@species360.org if you have questions after the webinar closes. I want to thank Sarah. Fantastic work. And thank you, Caitlin. Thank you, Hannah, for answering all the questions. And thank you all for attending. And I believe that will close us off for today.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining.